What was the best moment you've seen where the real world hit a spoiled rich kid? I grew up with rich kids and still keep in touch with a few of them. One guy's father owned the most prestigious law firm in town. He said his life changed the moment he called his father from jail, the second time it happened. His father said, "Well, sorry to hear you got arrested, good luck," then hung up. He said getting locked back into his cell was the singular moment that completely turned his life around. Rich guy in our college dorm thought he was untouchable cause his dad was some NFL player from the 90s and had not blown all his money yet. He would get freshman girls blackout drunk and then film himself having sex with them and then show all his buddies the next day or so. Well, one buddy was not as close as he thought and went to the RA, who then went to campus police and then real police. It was a fun night watching the parking lot fill up with the bored cops on duty that night and haul his ass out of the dorms while they went and gathered his evidence. That one Instagram model who got caught on video talking shit to a security guard at VidCon. Not only did the guard stand his ground and not let him in, because he wasn't famous enough to be given a pass and too rich to just buy one, but once the internet saw the video, the guard ended up with more followers than the kid. I knew this rich kid from high school that went off to college and partied every single night. His parents found out that he was failing basically all of his classes, so they secretly drove up early one Saturday morning with the spare set of keys to the car they had bought him and just drove off with the car. Classmate in college failed his course. Partied for a year with daddy's money. Never studied. Ever. Thing is, inheriting his father's construction company, 2 quarries, a fleet of trucks and AMP equipment, depended on him manning up and AMP passing the class. All he had to do was learn the basics of mechanical diagnostic and AMP repair, and be set for life. I knew a guy in high school who bragged that he didn't have to pay attention in school because, get this, his grandfather was a vice president of the corporation that supplied the cardboard for cereal boxes for General Mills. Real gravy train, you know. Last I checked, since deleted Facebook, he was still working at Best Buy 5 years after high school, same job he had in high school. Probably on the BBC yesterday when Prince Andrew got the shit kicked out of him for an hour about his association with Epstein. Administration and faculty at a university refused a substantial offer of endowment money from a couple that wanted their son enrolled as an art major. Their son couldn't meet the minimum scholastic entrance requirements and he had little aptitude for art. Still, with their millions, he thought money would buy his way to an easy degree as an art major. He was dumbfounded to receive a notice of non-admittance at a Starbucks, and she thought apparently people gave her parents free drinks and such for her all these years. Like the cashier told her the total and she said, "Wait, I don't get it for free?" She never realized her parents swiping their cards all those years was paying for her things, I guess. One of my college roommates told his parents the trip we were planning, that they were paying for, was $400 more expensive than it was, so he could buy a really nice bong. In addition, they basically paid for everything he wanted. He had their credit card and ordered food on it at least once daily. He also would make $50 purchases off the card pretty regularly. Long story short, they found out he lied about the cost of the trip. For whatever reason they still paid and let him go. But after the trip he could not use their card anymore. This dude acted like he lived the hardest life of all time afterwards, but eventually sucked it up. He actually acts way less entitled now. It ended up having a lasting positive effect for him, even though he wouldn't admit it. Local rich kid had his SUV parked in a no parking area at a club. Tow truck shows up to tow it away and the kid goes ballistic. "Do you know who my dad is?" etc. to the driver. After a minute or two of this, the passenger gets out of the tow truck and is a full patch Hell's Angel. The biker politely tells him it doesn't matter who he thinks his family is and the SUV is towed away. I went to a very rich, predominantly white Catholic high school. One moment I remember was the wind absolutely being taken out of a girl's sails when I explained to her why our school dominated the area's skiing, golf, and equestrian competitions, but never anything else. For a lot of kids in that school, the moment they learned they were rich was the moment they learned that most girls don't have their own horses growing up. Guy from my robotics group had his entire life handed to him. His dad was stupid rich because his dad bought shares in an oil field that turned out to have 40x the expected yield, making his $100,000 investment become around $3 million, then he dumped that into real estate rentals. He decided it would be fun to go to a school trip in Philly acting rich as duck. He drove his lifted modded SUV to a school we were doing a robotics event at in North Philly, talking to younger kids about how it's fun and their school has started offering it. Then we were going to the Franklin Institute from 10 a.m. to 3 p.m. then a Phantoms hockey game. Well, 9:30 rolls around and we leave the school to see our bus driver talking to cops. 5 kids drove themselves down. Guess which car was stolen? His $90,000 monstrosity was missing, and after 2 months all that was ever recovered was his stirrer from a pawn shop and his laptop. Best ducking part? He didn't have insurance on it yet because he can just buy the other person's car if there's an accident. Anyway, I'd win the fight. His dad flipped out over it and cut his allowance to $200 a month and forced him to drive a beater till he saved up his own money. Kid I knew won a cool $1 million off a scratch ticket when he was 19. Acted like a big shot. Arrogantly buying rounds of drinks for entire bars. Didn't do shit for 20 years. Then got the last check, alcoholic. No savings. No assets. No skills. He's now in and out of hospitals for alcohol poisoning and mental breakdowns. Lost his paper hat job. His GF. Everything. I'm trying to be a better man and not take delight in anyone's misfortune, but rich kid in my high school totaled his pickup truck. Got pissed when parents wouldn't replace it, so purposefully crashed his twin brother's pickup truck, cause if he couldn't have one neither could the brother. Not to mention all the legal stuff that I'm sure was fallout from doing that. Anyways, kid disappeared. I assumed he went to jail or some equivalent. Found out recently that no, he didn't actually. His parents literally disowned him, like with the paperwork and everything, and sent him on his way to fend for himself. And I have no idea how life turned out. Middle school. A classmate is on the phone, when most of us didn't have cell phones, screaming at her stepdad, "Patrick, I need the $500. I need to buy new jeans." She did not get the $500, but she did later get to be a teen mom. So that was cool. Nothing too serious, but I taught at an international school in Africa and we would take the high school students camping 1 week out of the year. Many of these kids are not used to camping at all and have never even taken public transport. They have full-time drivers bring them to school and pick them up. Some of them are from very wealthy and politically connected families. Having to set up tents and get dirty, not be able to shower every day, and sleep on hard ground is new to them. Some of them actually love it, but others are sad pathetic wretches the entire week. I had a roommate my freshman year of college that came from an incredibly rich oil family from the Middle East. I remember him having the hardest time adjusting to not having someone else prepare him food. I remember waking up one morning and going to the kitchen and seeing him try to eat eggs and toast he had just prepared himself. He asked me how I normally prepare fried eggs because his tasted really crunchy. Turns out he had just cracked the egg hole into the pan and prepared it shell and all. I couldn't stop laughing but felt really bad for the dude. When I was a teenager, my sister and I saw through our windows that there were 2 guys getting into her car. We ran downstairs as fast as possible and caught them in the act. One managed to run away but the other one froze and didn't run away. He couldn't have been much older than me. My sister called the cops and the kid kept looking at us and trying to find a way to escape. My sister said, "Run if you want. My brother will catch you." The cops came and so did his parents. His mom drove a ducking amazing car and the lady looked furious and sad. She was dressed really nice and looked like she was pretty successful. As soon as she got out she began yelling, "Why? We give you everything. You have everything. Why would you try and steal? Don't we give you enough?" The kid just seemed to shrink and get smaller. I don't get it. Ducking asshole. I hope he turned his life around and began to be around better people. Tears of disbelief when seeing poverty for the first time. The first day my mission team drove into Tijuana, Mexico. We were high school students and had spent the first few days in LA prepping, and most of the team still had this idea that we would spend 5 days in a poor area, save everyone and then go home with something amazing for our college applications. Krista was this bitch whose parents were wealthy. All the parties were at her house since they had a pool. Her mom used to buy her 6 or 7 prom dresses and then return the ones she didn't like because it was easier than shopping, and she was a two-faced witch. So we're crammed into this passenger van and the border crossing into Mexico is fine, but as soon as we get to our neighborhood and Krista sees scrap wood with tarps which make up the homes and children playing half naked in streets made of dirt, when she realizes that the water coming down from the single bathroom isn't water, when a child happily hands her a gift, his favorite rock, she breaks. She just completely broke down into tears and disbelief because her entire life had been sheltered from the reality of anything but the rich and spoiled. I wish I could say it changed her into a better person, but she remained a spoiled and self-centered bitch until I purposefully lost touch with her family. The real world can hit a rich kid, but they can ignore the pain if they just focus hard enough on the car daddy promised to buy them. No joke here. Back in high school 90s this kid got a brand new Chevy Camaro. I had an old ass 80s Pontiac Phoenix that had the straight 6. It was by far not a racing car, but this tool was just looking to brag at what he got compared to the busted cars we got. About 2 days later, while we were waiting at a stoplight, this idiot tries to race us as I am in my car and I pull up with my friends. He starts by revving it really loud and tries to do a burnout. Mind you, the light was red and the roads were not wet. So he managed to get a tiny burnout going, some smoke and whatnot. When his tires did catch traction, he went barreling into the intersection and smashed the car of the wife of one of the very few cops in my small city. Needless to say, that didn't work out for him very well. For a couple of years in high school I went to this super expensive American private school in Switzerland. The company my dad worked for paid for almost all the tuition, so it was an amazing opportunity for me. Most of the kids in this school were either State Department or from American families living in Saudi. Saudi provided expat kids with school up until 10th grade, so you had to go to a school abroad to finish HS. There were, however, a few Saudi kids that were there, mostly so that they would be able to speak flawless English to help out their future careers. One of these kids, who I will call the prince, was somewhere in the line of Saudi succession, but honestly, he was like 1455th in line for the throne. Not a real contender for king, but his family was rich. Like rich in a way that most of us can't even imagine. This school had some rules, like you couldn't have a car as a student, even if you were old enough to get a license. Switzerland. This rule was a real buzzkill for the prince, but he made it through the year somehow. Over the summer after his junior year, he drove back to the school from Geneva in his Lambo, probably just because he could do it outside the school year. On his way up the mountain, the road is like an endless series of hairpin turns. He managed to flip his Lambo into vineyard while trying to navigate one of those hairpin turns. I'm guessing a Lambo has a lot of power, and he took it to heart. His parents, furious at what he had done, decided to punish him by replacing his Lamborghini with a Porsche. And the prince was so angry. He complained about it bitterly when the school year started up again. The rest of us kind of just looked at each other in amazement. Same planet, different worlds, I guess.